cleaning up all the mech from my plants. I don't know if mech is a real word, but we're just going to use mech as a real word. Hi, welcome. It's Saturday morning, and this is the Art of Rock. First and foremost, I want to acknowledge the Tongva people as being the traditional landowners of Hollywood, California, and Los Angeles, where I am. The Art of Rock is all about helping you make your music happen. Uh, there you go. Boom. Overcoming writer's block. Talking about Reverb, all sorts of stuff. Good fun. Every Saturday morning, we are here on Angelspit's Twitch. Go like Angelspit's Twitch. Yay! Or go like Angelspit's YouTube, that we're also streaming there full time, real time. I don't care about words anymore. I don't care about anything because I'm an out of control youth. And I've been an out of control youth for actually many, 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 many years. It's been great. This is made possible with Angelspit's Patreon. Go follow it. If you want to throw me $3 a month, that would be amazing. Angelspit's new album is called Red End, and if you're a Patreon person, you got a free copy. Yay! There's also a whole bunch of amazing music called the Industrial Incisions playlist. I want you to go and follow that because there's a bunch of bloody awesome bands. Wednesday night, everyone hangs out and is cool with Vulture Culture. I'm wearing a t-shirt. So Wednesday night, deep dives into synths. It's bloody brilliant. So do that. We're gonna, after we're done here, we're gonna stream right on over to MTV TV because it's amazing. Please watch MTV TV. It's got so much cool stuff on it. It's freaking brilliant. Rezi, thank you so much for being an amazing co-host.
Hey, great to be here. Good to see you. Hello.
I'm very grateful that you're always picking it up when I drop it. And here's a bunch of people who will also hopefully be joining us today. Lastly, I think the GoFundMe for Drake's family is still going on. We lost Drake a few months ago to cancer, so chuck him a few bucks and look after him. Some of Drake's gear will be for sale soon, so that's going to be another great way to keep Drake's memory going. I own some of his gear. Welcome to the Art of Rock. I want to talk about the illustrious question, which is, hold on, I have to push go live. Hi, everybody on Twitch. On bloody Instagram. This is the Art of Rock. We're talking about getting through your musical problems and stuff like that. Wow. Oh my God. So Rezi, you had an update on the cover tune situation that we spoke about last week.
Yes, I did. We talked about it for a little while, and I don't think there was any overt misinformation, but there is still confusion about what we're licensing and how to make that license pay the actual songwriters. So this is mechanicals on streaming and downloads. That's the sort of thing when we send our cover tune to a distributor, which I did, the distributor should know that that's a cover so that they can easily pay the songwriter. But there is what we forgot to mention is there is an organization called the MLC, which for years has been keeping track of the royalties due and charging people like Spotify large amounts of money due that they were never bothering to pay formerly, and putting it to the songwriters and publishers for the songwriting, a mechanical songwriting component of interactive streaming. So that would be simple. You don't do anything. You release the cover, you check a box that says it's a cover, so it's easy to keep track of and you don't get busted for, being neglectful. And then the streamers that play the stuff interactively, you click play and it plays it. You select the song and it plays it. That stream is correctly royalty split, and your writer of the song, as long as you haven't changed it and made a new song out of it, derivative work or anything like that. The reason it seems complicated is because Apple, Amazon, Play, Google don't separate their interactive streaming from their downloadable. So you can't just elect to go into interactive streaming for all these things. You also, if you're going to go to Apple, if you're going to go to Amazon, several others, you're in their downloads also. That's a different license. So it doesn't get a lot more complicated. But the one detail there is that you need to buy an explicit statutory license for the number that you're probably going to have downloaded. And you can do that through HFA, as we talked about, Songfile, or There's one that I just used called Affordable Song Licensing. I like the directness of their name, and they show the two people that seem to run the place, and they were good about uh, customer service, and their purchase flow was a little bit more, say, 2007 and later than HFA Songfile was. But that's the simplicity. Cover tune, streaming, you're done. MLC handles it. Apple and Amazon and Google for downloads, probably others get the license for that. But you can just omit Apple and the other downloaders if you don't want to get involved in that. You can just do the streaming, and MLC will handle your royalty splits for the mechanical licensing of the song writer and publisher shares.
Fantastic. Thank you so
Neat.
much. So basically, ask Google.
Yeah, look that up, reread it, because the information is pretty well available on the licensing companies. Harry Fox doesn't really explain it well, but affordablesonglicensing.com does have a good primer on it, and pretty much that's where I'm getting the information from. And
That's
that
great.
remembering that I have an account with the MLC as a songwriter, so I get my mechanical penny drizzle from them too. So it's a two-way street.
That's brilliant. Okay, thank you. Did anybody else want to chime in on this, or do we want to go to it's actually something quite similar to this, which is drum libraries and virtual instruments? Okay, let's go. Rezi, when you're doing a cover and doing music in general, do you use drum libraries? Do you have a stash of them, virtual instruments? Give me a rant. Let's go here.
So I may have mentioned this particular library before. It's an old Ableton, Akai. They both start with A. CD-ROM of Bob Clearmountain drums. And they're the same drums that you hear on stuff that he produced around that time of when you would have an Akai S950 or S1000 sampler. I heard the resonating familiarity on the song Run to You by Bryan Adams from, I think, 85 through 87, someplace in there. And it's like, oh yeah, those are absolutely the same kid in the same room with the same effects processing, probably by the same drummer. So they are great sounding. I love them, but it's a little bit like you really have to want that sound if you're going to use these, because there's only so much you can do with basically like they're left-right samples, and so A-B samples for round robin, so you don't get machine gunning. And they are layered 3 or 4 velocity hits, so you've got your light taps and your hard hits mapped out in a reasonable curve. But that's where that complexity ends. And I'm all about just picking the one sample that I like and just using that velocity split and doing a drum machine style, brutal, all the nuances derived through composition and levels. But I'm also really excited about how Logic's drum personalities work. When you say, yeah, I want a hippie with a mustache playing an old Lucite kit in a shag carpet room, you kind of get something like that, and you can very in a lot of detail change how they play and tell them how to play. So those are sort of the two extremes: multi-mic'd, huge nuanced things, and these sort of basic, not so much detailed things. And yeah, I don't have a modern equivalent right now. BFD was my choice for a multi-mic drum library instrument. Ableton's session drums does that, but I don't like really vibe with their sounds. Short of going through my sample collection and building a kit every single time, I like having a drum instrument around so that when I play pads or program them in, I can do like, yeah, that kind of sounds like a drummer. And if I get a drummer to play it, they'll know where I'm going with it. So that's like where I'm at with this stuff. I'm going to buy a new drum instrument. What are we doing? Who's doing what?
Excellent. Thank you very much. Brett, what are your thoughts on this?
All right, so I got a couple thoughts. I got a couple of ways in which I have done what Rezi is talking about. So yeah, so the first kind of side that you touched on is the sample side, where of course you can sit there and mess with your velocities a bit, your volumes and whatnot, and that does kind of change the timbre. To that regard, I use FPC. for something to that regard. This is included in FL Studio, and it's a sample player. So I included a chat here in our Zoom, or I included a link in our Zoom here, so you can kind of see what I'm talking about. In that, you got some envelope control. You've got your filters, you've got your pannings, and it's very, very reminiscent of old drum machines, kind of. Which then brings me to how I use old drum machines in a very similar manner. And I tend to like the Alesis drum machines because of how they did that sampling already in the machine. Lastly, though, where it starts to touch on, okay, you want to buy a new drum instrument. Superior Drummer is the GOAT, in my opinion. You'll even see 66 Samus on YouTube load up electronic kits and use Superior Drummer as the back end, which is to say you can literally take this on your Yamaha, 5-pad. I'm going to beat it up to those drums. I forget what you call them. Sorry, in the background. You can plug this up to literally anything. And, the way they did their sampling and everything like that is brilliant, simple, puts it right in a nice interface. You can swap out drums, kits. I mean, they have their own mixing and the works. I used to use that almost exclusively, but since then, the Kurzweils have kind of taken over.
Okay, thank you. This is interesting. Ivan, tell me your thoughts on this.
Oh, you had to find my. Oh, anyways, yeah, I use Big Kick and was it DC drums, the plugins, and you can stick your own samples into that. Stick my own samples into that, and then squish them down or modify them to not suck, hopefully. And like on the programming side, like keeping your different drums kind of in separate tracks gives you the ability to compress them differently, which does come in handy. And then for sounds, I feel like they're coming from all over the place. But I do have check my user library. Yeah, I do have the DMX kit and the mostly I use the DMX kit. And then just heavily edit the crap out of them because more edited, more better.
For bloody sure, mate. Thank you. Razi, back to you, babe. What are your thoughts?
I'm not going to stop using, just samples in a sample player from my DAW. That's definitely always going to be one of the ways. So specifically, yeah, Superior Drummer, Brett, that's looking like one of the only vigorously supported, extremely active, very well community integrated. They're active. They're making that thing still. Whereas BFD that I bought first in 2006 actually disappeared for a while. FXpansion ceased to be a company, and it was bought by not Music Group, but one of the other Alesis parent companies in music. But they seem to exist now, and so Superior's 400, 500, and BFD right now is on sale for $50 still, $60. So
I think the difference there, though, Razi, is Superior Drummers already designed for most of the electronic drum kits, including the multi-zone drum kits. So
yep.
And the thing about it is you don't need the drum kit itself to actually take advantage of those features.
I think that is a strength, but here's the thing. I mean, Alesis has built BFD into some of their drum kits now, so they're also doing that. That's, I think, why they bought it, if I'm understanding this correctly. So I think they might be still, and we don't know if they're going to be a good custodian of BFD. But since I've got so much library already from 30 years or whatever, and it's only $50, like I could probably justify, given the price difference, maybe having BFD anyhow. Um, we'll see. And it is a matter of the sounds more than the workflow, because I'm comfortable dealing with whatever they're throwing at us, as long as it's got separate, room mics, overheads, and closed mics that I can get to the DAW. I'm fine with either of them, and I can start ignoring the plug-in. But Superior, I cannot argue against as far as features and, like you said, some of the ways that it maps. Like it's got a whole screen just for mapping to the kit and zones on the pad and stuff. It looks amazing for that.
Brilliant, man. Thank you so much. Alex, it's so good to see you. Welcome back. Of course, what are you eating?
I'm eating rice pudding
Fantastic. Fantastic. What are your
because
thoughts on? Sorry, go ahead.
because I had a craving for it, but that's not important.
Well, it's like 6 p.m. there, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, dude, the world. It's so big. It's not actually, when you think about it, it's very small. It's terrifyingly small. Alex, what are your thoughts on this?
Me personally, I use a mix of self-recorded samples and stuff that came with my samplers as well as Ableton. Um, I I bought also some drum sounds separately. The ones I bought were utility kicks, which is something that Electron sells for their machines. And it's just a bunch of kick drums. They are more electric and dance focused. But I think they're quite tasteful. They are unlike, wow, this is the best kick drum ever. But they tend to work. You can drop them in and usually it just works. And I quite like that because they're so easy to mix with other things. The next one, I really used a ton out of the ones that came with the Akai MPC 1000, especially the TR kits, and also they had like a traditional Japanese percussion sample kit, which was also brilliant if you detuned them and put them through effects and stuff like that. Especially tuning them lower was like, mwah. And then, of course, making my own with either drum synthesizers, and among them, my favorites are the FAC what's it called? FAC drum kit, which is an iPad app and Mac app, and it's a drum synthesizer where you can draw the curve of the volume and the pitch fall off, and I really like that because you can fine tune the transient really nicely, because you can just drag a point across your screen and immediately change it. And they had like this diagram where it shows you this is the transient part, this is the body part, this is the reverberation part, something like that. Yeah, and next I also bought the first Snore drum for cheap secondhand. And it's weird because it sounds good, but it doesn't feel like a synthesizer. It feels more like what you used to do as a kid to cut out like parts from like a catalog or magazines and then glue them together. And it's more like that because you have like, I don't know if it's a sample or maybe synthesized, but it feels like a sample of a transient with like a waveform and then a sample of noise. And then you can tune them and change the pitch and the envelope. It sounds good, but it doesn't feel like a synthesizer. And it also has like a weird scheme of using it. And of course, like just using regular synthesizer making drum sounds. But they tend to sound unique, but not the best thing for the job. I really like the snare sounds I did with the Dark Energy, but usually it sounds more like Kraftwerk and less like, I don't know, a drum.
Okay, thank you. So here's a rant. I went to a club last night and I had a very interesting conversation with a latex designer. And she'd been doing it a while. She's very good. And we were having this conversation about how it was basically punk versus production, and how the craziness of the experimentation. Here we go again. We're talking about experimentation again of your youth, where you have no idea what the fuck you're doing. You're just doing it. Versus, okay, well, now you've been doing this for 20 years plus. You know exactly what you're doing and you're in a rut, or you're finding it difficult to break outside of your very demanding quality control. And I bring this up specifically because of drums. And something I'm experimenting with at the moment is using VST drums. I don't normally do that. I use an Emax or a K2000 or a modular because I'm a wanker, but also because the thing about the VST drums, it's not that it's fast, it's that and it's the same with presets. I'm using more presets because it's someone else's way of thinking about things, not mine. And that to me is kind of becoming a really strangely invaluable thing, is that I don't know what I'm doing right now, but I'm taking this thing from another person. And I think that one thing I'm trying really hard to get away from is overthinking and my personal quality control. And although that's very important to me, my music and all that shit, sometimes it gets in the way because there becomes a rut and you can't explore and experiment and go places. And when you lay them all out in an album, it's like, oh shit, everything sounds the same. Or it's all got that, sonic stamp on it. And breaking out of that habit is, for me, really hard. So yeah, I am starting to, mess around with VST drums, but it's like, if I want to start, my go-to drum kit is an LM1, like a crappy LM1 plugin, because I know what I'm going to get, and there it is. Obviously 909s are great, but just because when I'm writing, like in the beginnings of writing a track, I just want to throw it down so I know what's going on. But then I get into this other problem where, so the drums that I end up just throwing down, they get used, like I'll send it to the modular, I'll send it to somewhere where I've got some beefy fucking thing doing the drums, and I'm still using that initial, I'm just throwing it down drum pattern. And that's something I guess what I'm saying is that it's a constant, like, punk, crazy, throw it the fuck down, don't care, just do it, versus, no, wait a minute, we need to produce this and work on it. And getting the balance right there, because you'd think the balance says, oh no, think about it and work on it. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it's like, I know you're overthinking about it. It sounds like fucking Rush. Don't get me wrong, Rush are great. I know, Rizzy, that hurt,
Whoa,
didn't it?
whoa, 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 whoa.
I know, just wind up a minute there, buddy. Rush are great, and same Peter Gabriel's great, but it's like, it doesn't sound like they were drunk and throwing things around the studio. And sometimes you want it to sound like you're drunk and you're throwing things around the studio, or you're just throwing things around the studio, whatever. Blah, that's it. Resi, go.
I think you raise a really strong issue and point that I might have glossed over, in that all of the people on this panel have a strong affinity and background for synthesizing your drums and abusing your samples. And I think probably a lot of idiosyncratic skills at doing that. And each of us has maybe an easy time coming up with, like kind of stuff. And it's there for us. I feel that way. Like, I know the four ways I'd probably synthesize if I needed one, and I can walk over to it or call it up and have it. And maybe one of us on this panel also has a drum kit that they can walk over to and get a trusted sort of, I'm going to walk the dog and there's caveman drum fills. That is what I need for this, just to get started. And it's that get started moment that if I need, I listen back to some classics, new wave stuff, and it's human drummer with metal hi-hats and plastic skins. There's not, the drum machine isn't the main thing. In, let's say, well, I mean, if we're talking Duran Duran and Gary Newman at the moment, the drum machines are the secondary percussive element, and there's a human either doing a weird ass feel or a really strong, feel. because they have cans on listening to a click or the drum machine. So there's something in that. I get hung up not having a go-to acoustic human style drum kit to then either not use in the track or see through all the way, but it has to be, for my creative flow, the kit that I start with either has to get totally replaced because there's a person that's contributing the drums and they did their own part and it's great, or I really value being able to start with that, just taking a stroll and all right, I don't have to change a single drum. I got so used to these. I have demoitis, but I can EQ and room and compress the individual elements that I started with because it was just a VST, instrument that had, and maybe I changed the kick and maybe I added a layer, but like that's there for the fundamentals for that sort of, like it's not even rock. It's a new wave aesthetic, I think is where I'm looking for. So, idea through production is where I think the strength of these multi-sampled studio style drum instruments. And I wish Ableton's was it for me. I really do, but it's just not the sound.
That's interesting when you say not the sound. Because that's the other thing about messing around with fucking drums and shit for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours, and it's not the sound. Like Alex, what you were saying about your thing. Yeah, it's like I want a fucking snare drum to punch me in the face. And okay, look, I'm going to be really quick. My favorite samples of drums is when I was recording guitars fucking for Hideous and Perfect a million years ago, and there's a drum kit in the room, and I got the guitarist who couldn't play drums just to bash the snare every 10 seconds. And because they weren't a very good drummer, they weren't hitting dead center. They were hitting off a bit, dead center, off a bit. So it's this pingy moving around snare sound. So I've got these like 7 sounds that I'll go through, and it's the most alive fucking drums I've ever heard, because not only is it recorded in a very shit room, which sounds amazing, but because they're not hitting the snare every single time at the same ping point, it's got all of these different harmonics as they're moving around the skin. And because there's 7, it doesn't overlap. It keeps on a non kind of like thing, when you know what I mean. So, and I remember there's a Trent fucking quote where he was saying the best drum sound is a microphone hung off lights, one like 58 over a drum kit, and you just fucking play. And it's pure energy. And there you go. Production versus punk. I mean, like, it's not always that way, but it's like, dude, I know they're my thoughts. Alex, what are your thoughts on this?
Sometimes you don't even need that many different samples. Sometimes you just need a compressor and tweak the attack time, and then you get either more body or more transient. And that's usually how I get faster to the sound I want, is just get into the ballpark with the sample and then compress it and distort it and retune it until it fits. Another thing is, if anybody knows if you can access the samples of Native Instruments battery, because I've heard they were really good, but I don't want to use the VST. I would like them to use them with my hardware, and I don't want to re-sample them because it's a bit annoying.
Can you ask that again?
So the company Native Instruments has a plugin that's called Battery. And supposedly it has like really good samples, but I would like to use them with my hardware samplers instead of in my computer. So if it's possible to access these samples in a folder, and if anybody knows if it's possible, that would be great, because then that would help me decide if I want this or not. Because otherwise I would have to put a notes in my DAW and record each sample separately, and that's just a huge amount of work. And if there's just a folder somewhere that this plugin has access to that I can snatch the samples from, that would be awesome. So if anybody knows if that's possible.
Okay. I do not, but I'll ask around. Thank you. Pulling samples out of old synthesizers is another really interesting topic. Brett, what are your thoughts on this?
So Alex, just real quick, in a quick search, it does say yes, it's possible to export samples in Native Instruments battery. Users can save their kits as monolith files, which then collect all the samples and save them as one unified file along with the cell settings. So there is something to say that, at least in the instructions, that should be possible. I've not.
Okay, the thing I wanted is just a folder where all the wave files are. So, or if they're somehow compressed or baked into the thing.
Yeah, that's going to be a matter of delving into the manual at this point. I've not done it, but like I said, there does appear to be some method to accomplish that goal. And then I forgot what else I was going to say, so go on.
Rezi, thank you. Rezi, hit me.
My long history of piracy says that a lot of these are baked into a multi-sample file of some sort, and then they use pointers to get to the multi-samples. I don't know if battery is like that, so this is a non-answer, but I did want to chime in that I know what you're talking about, where it can be complicated. And even if its export is a blob, you got to then still look at where each transient is and segment it by hand, so you're not any further along. But man, if you're just, Alex, is there something in battery that you like in particular that makes it worth dealing with them when there's so fucking many available folders of drum samples out there to torrent or legally obtain?
I think I'm just looking for general drum samples. So, yeah.
Yar.
So, Rezi, your hand's still up. Oh no, it's not. Okay. So I've got several different incarnations of the Fairlight drums, and dude, I gotta tell you, man, the Emulator 2 fucking drums and the Fairlight drums, it's as 80 as they get. So if you want big snares, because fucking ZZ Top's bloody Afterburner and a lot of that shit, it's all Fairlight. The drums are a fucking Fairlight, and they sound dope, and like fucking dope still. So you can get those samples in their fucking, I think they're 16. They use the Fairlight 3, I think 16 44.1. But there's also a whole bunch of the original Emulator 2 stuff. And the Emulator 2 and the Emulator samples, they're all WAV files. They're all everywhere. Oh my God, they are so good. They are so fucking good. And a lot of those ones, like if I'll use a sample on the Emacs, for example, and I haven't used the Emacs in such a long time. Obviously velocity a bit, but also put a bit of filter on it. So the gentler it is, the more the harder you hit it, the more you're opening the filter, and also affect the pitch, the tiniest amount, like the minimum amount. So the harder you hit it, the higher the sound is, because that's actually technically what happens with the drum, with the skin drum. You are changing the pitch. Rezi, talk to me.
We're kind of also highlighting a difference in architecture here, where if you've got your collection of samples in a folder, you've got them. The end. They're there. They're going to be. File systems haven't obsoleted themselves yet in the entire lifetime. Most of us have loaded a floppy in the past 5 years or 5 months, 5 minutes. However, and Ivan, this touches on some of the thoughts that I've been sort of echoing in my head about the wrapper VST control channel strip that you've been using, where you've just doubled your surface of exposure for obsolescence and bugs and things that go wrong when we're talking about a plugin that holds the samples. And this is, Alex, you mentioned battery. I was specifically avoiding the Native Instruments solutions, not because I know that they've obsoleted some of their stuff, but because the one that I was looking at, BFD, did disappear for a while. And it's like, these things get stuck. So you're now no longer just your DAW. You got to keep that up to date. It'll load your samples. You can put it in the things. Now you've got the plugin that held all of your drum compositions. If you didn't bounce it out, is now a thing that you need to make sure still supports the new silicon architecture in your computer 10 years later, if you care about that sort of thing. And sometimes, posterity matters and the longevity of these things. So just considering the strength of folder of samples versus software instrument with all of the, key switches and velocity curves and pad mapping and stuff that gives you, like, there is a balance there. And I guess what that comes down to for the songwriter and recordist is bounce out your stereo at least, so you've got your stem of the drums at the end of the day. So if that particular drum instrument ever disappears because you've changed architecture or you changed platform, or they nuked their authorization servers or something, you don't have to go to piracy, and you'll have a printed available copy of the composition to fall back on. It's just something to think about. I don't know if it has anything directly to do with how I'm deciding what to get, but it's on my mind.
Thank you, Brett. Hit me with your brain juice.
As we were talking about these VSTs and whatnot, it kind of occurred to me that I'm a little bit more on the side, like with Ivan there, with compression and effects that really make drum hit like sounds more drummy. At least in how I'm using it. So, once you get a hit of some kind into the DAW, I mean, you can pretty much you can turn it into anything. And I find that what I end up doing is taking a single drum sound, usually a sample, and for rhythmic effect, I will cut different pieces out of that single sample, like the drum machine would, kind of. So if I don't want the actual sound of the hit itself, but maybe I want the more resonant quality of the drum to be a hit, I'll just grab that little bit out of it, and then I'll add, that compression or whatever to spike it up just a touch. And I figured I'd throw that out there, because I do have a couple of VSTs that I use that, are specifically designed for punching up drums. A lot of those are sub bass enhancers and other things that do multi-frequency compression, so that you can actually pull out both the highs and the lows and drop the mids and all that good stuff.
Okay, thank you, man. This is really that's a great check. I remember you mentioned this before, and I found that some samplers have the ability to change the start point, and you can velocity sense that. So what you can do is say, if I hit it at the hardest it is, it will start the drum right at the beginning of the sample. But the softer I hit it, the more the sample point is going to move into the drum, and thus denying it the clang of that transient attack, which is great because you can go bam, bam, tut, 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 tut. So it actually starts on a gentler tap. It's playing further through the drum sample where it's not the attack. When you start doing shit like that, it gets really real. It gets great. Good fun. Do we want to keep plowing on this? Or do we want to also talk about virtual instruments a bit? Just before we do, I want to also point out that Sustain the Drone, which is a big drone thing, is happening today. And I'm doing a bloody session there on the Blaster Beam at 3:30, 3:45 Pacific Standard Time. So that's going to be good fun. That's like in 6 hours. So if you're bored, jump on. They're also on Twitch, but if you follow their and it's I think it's nearly 24 hours of drone as well, different acts. Some of them are live, some of them are streaming in. It's quite a fucking shindig. Tell me more. Yeah, thank you, Brett. That's 6:35 Eastern Standard Time. Tell me about, as far as like virtual instruments, do you do it similar? Like, what's the deal with that one?
Yeah, so like virtual instruments and such like that. I briefly mentioned FPC, which I shared there, and it's of course a basic sample player. So in my library, what I've got is a lot of semi-organized drum kits that I've collected over the years, many of which I've never heard. It came in a pack of like 4 gigs, and single one shot drum samples. Man, good luck getting to the bottom of that. So, really, when I'm after something new, I dig into that toy box and I find something I haven't heard before, and I can usually tell because the folders themselves have some weird long number instead of what I've named them. So I know that's not an exact answer to your question in terms of VSTs and whatnot. What I will say is, I did mention Superior Drummer, and way back more in my piracy days, which is why I'm not currently using it. I did use Easy Drummer, and I saw a Rob there posted the drum kit from Hell. By the way, that's running for $53 there, Resi, and it is worth every bit. That is actually the drum kit I used to use all the time, and what I loved about it is you can blend metal and industrial right there like Siamese twins. That VST all day long, all day long. If you're looking for, I mean, basically Easy Drummer was the predecessor to Superior Drummer, and that's where they figured out all the other things that they now charge $500 for. Well, the drum kit from Hell was the official update to Easy Drummer, which brought some of those features into it, and you tune the drums a little bit differently, but as a VST to accomplish it, I mean, you'd be hard pressed to record a real drum as good as they have already done. And that's really the trick. And like even on the drum kit back here, what I used to do is the 4 electronic pads were chained. I would trigger off of the DM5 to Easy Drummer. So that way I could take advantage of some of those bigger sounds that the VST was able to do while I was jamming with the acoustic side. And the acoustic side is fun, but man, you've got to take a lot into account with drums and recording them. Yes, you can hang the mic up there. In fact, these 2 guys right here were actually my XY overheads for that drum kit. Every drum had its own mic. There's just so much, and it's not called crosstalk. It's just so much resonance. And it's great for a large room, where you can sit there and let that resonance breathe. And then if you record it that way, it's awesome. In a tight room, man, it can really be overpowering. And so that's really when I kind of steered away more from the acoustic side. Now my thinking is more of if I'm going to go to the acoustic side, I'm probably going to keep 3 drums: the bass drum, the tom, the floor tom, and the snare. And it's going to be a standing kit. Everything else, it's like, even the cymbals, man, it's just so overpowered for the room. And that's really what you got to take into accord when you start talking about acoustic instruments. It's impossible to get that big sound out of a drum in a small room. It's just too much power.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Hey, Adapt, Manipulate, and everybody else, welcome. We're talking about drums, which is electronic sampling, the whole lot. This is fantastic. Alex, melt my brain.
I forgot my hand was still up. Sorry.
Oh my God. No, that's okay. No, okay. So does anybody else? I'm gonna jump in about bloody sample virtual instruments. Like, I use sample libraries. It's so interesting that they've got such a 90s fucking mindset about them. Like, I've still got my, CD-ROM plugged into my emulator for. Every now and then I will use something off that. I always go into the zips. I've got a million really amazing zip libraries. But interestingly, I'm trying to get away from it just because reasons. And I spent so much time like going through all these different zip libraries and making fucking notes about shit. And zip disks die. That's what sucks. So do floppy drives, floppy disks. But yeah, so everything's kind of like organized haphazardly. But increasingly I'm just trying to get just as money, and that's why I'm looking at your metallics samples, Ivan. Thank you. I'm trying to build as much stuff from scratch as I can. I don't know why I do this. Does anyone notice? Maybe I notice. Yeah, maybe it's part of the sound or something. I don't know. It's fun. Alex, what are your thoughts?
Well, it makes you sound definitely like you. But I feel like in some regards, old libraries can be better than modern ones because I feel like back in a certain time where storage was a real issue, um, you and maybe not with the first sample CDs, but I think it's carried over a bit from the days where you had like a sampler with floppy drives, and you really had to select for good samples and not go for mass. And I think like at least the early sample CDs were kind of in that spirit that you had like maybe 3 unique kits more than maybe 100 different ones that aren't like what you're looking for.
And it's really amazing how something that gets me about sample libraries is it's like Brett, you mentioned it before, when you've got gigs of stuff, it's like, nah, nah, this is making my brain hurt. It's making me not want to do music. Like, please, I don't want this. I feel so sorry for people who identify as a producer. Just because it's like, and they make beats. Like, dude, I just the obligation of, oh my God, I feel so sorry for you. Just like going through fucking drum sounds. Like, I can't do it. I just fucking can't. Doesn't work, distort it, compress it, fuck it up. I don't know. I want to play at 10,000 sounds. No, please don't. Resi, help me.
You are you. I wanted to put my hand down because you wrapped the last thing you said with because it's fun. Like, I think you just summed up the whole thing that I was going to jump back in on. Why do I do this? You did because it's there, like the mountain, etc. All that. It's like these are the things about carving out a personality sonically and carving out habits and skills engineeringly, producerly, with apologies, like there's always that question about like people who call themselves producers, like, do they just grab beats that are pre-made? Maybe. Do they create beats out of drums that are pre-made? Maybe. Do they create drum hits from drums in a room with a microphone that are pre-made? Maybe. Do they build a log drum and skins from did they grow the animal? It's like, do you invent the universe or do you live in it? I guess, it's a well-populated metaphorical universe here. And just picking your entry point along that vast continuum and getting something done and still having fun and making something original are important features, I think, of finishing albums, finishing songs, finishing recordings. And, when you can eliminate some chores like packing up a drum kit and going to the studio for something that you already know you've done, that's a good step to save. If you do want to enjoy the entire process of setting up a drum kit in air in a room and miking it, like Brett was saying, the drum kit is an instrument with the room included. That's an instrument, an event that is a different experience if you use the sampled individual recordings of those things. And Carl, you're talking about VSTs versus samples, or virtual instruments versus samples, I think still. And the effect of BFD, Superior, Easy, and some of the others is the mic bleed and shell resonance are elements that you can decide how much snare bleed you want in the kick mics. And that's an interesting thing to be able to do. If you've been in the studio recording your own drums, you realize you didn't actually have the choice in a real drum kit to say, well, do I want the snare bleed going into the snare mics only, or do I want it in the tom and kick mics? And my God, you're in a deep well of, overkill on decision making. I've been there. I'm saying this from experience. Like, I'm making these 6 hours later, I'm still picking a kick drum kind of thing. And the same goes for reverbs when you don't have a big room on your drums and you're simulating it. But yeah, picking the part that's fun and you're still going to get something done is like, I think what I wanted to get at with that. And testing where that is part of the process. And there's a lot of, wow, there's so many different places to get into it now. And I'm like, primitive guy building a hut kind of thing where he makes a drum. You might want to start there and have because YouTube, who knows? But anyway, I like the ideas.
Fascinating. Thank you. Brett, what are your ideas?
So, and this kind of comes, well, actually, all of this kind of bleeds into what we've been talking about, I guess. Ultimately, this comes down to design, because at the end of the day, whether it is that or it is a VST or it is something, we're all going to be targeting those frequencies and whatnot we need for our songs. The annoying part about going through all those samples when you're trying to write a song is that it's just like you said, it's not very productive. By that point, you really kind of need to have your idea. But it's huge fun to have that same library when I don't have a clear path, and often it ends up being more sound design than songwriting, which leads to the tools and everything that I end up using for songs. So I guess what I'm getting at is that there are different goals each time I come into the studio. Every time I come to the studio is not necessarily to write a song. Sometimes it's to find out. A lot of times it's to fuck around and find out. The guitars behind me sitting on the guitar case there are a perfect example of that. I've got 3D parts and everything else going into them. I'm just trying to make a huge noise machine. That all broke down, but it was huge fun, So what did I get out of it? I learned half my shit's broken. And I also learned that some of my stuff works together better than others and things like that. How productive is that? I don't know yet.
Thank you. Brief break. On the subject of fixing shit. So I've been wanting to build a little module that is it's got resistors built into it. So you plug it in, input, and the output is it's fixed. There's no knob, it's fixed. So if 4 volts go in, 1 volt comes out. And so this one cuts it down by a quarter, this one cuts it down by an eighth, And I sort of did it on Monday just because I want to fuck around today. I just want to fuck around. And it's really interesting how having a day in your studio, either fixing shit or unfucking shit or moving stuff around or cleaning up, is really good for your creative space. Crawling around behind there with a little fucking vacuum cleaner, getting rid of all the dust. Stuff like that, making sure you don't knock any leads out, because if you knock out the cables, it's like, fuck. But yeah. Absolutely. Do we want to move on to neat reverb tricks? Because that's a good segue. Rezi, tell me about your experimentation in reverb.
One of the things. Oh God, I mean, a good, spacious, natural, smooth reverb is always, hey, it takes more CPU power and it's harder to make the algorithm and it's more rare. So, usually it has a lushness and an expensiveness and a qualityness kind of sound going on. I mean, we kind of solved this algorithmically a long, long time ago, but we kind of didn't, because people are still dumbasses about reverb algos, and even the parametric. What's the other kind? The sample a room and put it in a the other kind, not algorithmic. But these are solved, yet we still have shitty ass. Say again.
Convolution.
Thank you. Convolution reverbs. I don't know where that word went, but it was not in my head anywhere. Which all I could think of was altiverb. because the first convolution reverb that I had. But anyway, the one reverb algorithm developer that I know by name is Sean Costello, Valhalla DSP. And I've been using one of his collaborative works in Audio Damage EOS. I think that's the one. Yeah. For a long time, like for years, it was a good buy. It does some swirly, smooth long tails. But I was like, I haven't bought anything directly from Valhalla. I'm going to look at Future Verb. And Future Verb is fucking beautiful. It's great. I've been using it for pop that on the vocal send, and it fits into the mix. I've been using it experimentally for long ass guitar tails. And yeah, I don't know which exact adjectives to throw at it, but lush, smooth, evolving, pleasing, easy to dial in with this thing. They're great. And I sort of wanting to launch into if we've done any interesting, once you've got a good reverb or a bad reverb, what do you do next? Like, yeah, okay, good. You say into it and you've got something, or you put a space around your thing so it sounds like it was in a room. I mean, those are pretty much go-tos. And I don't know if I've seen this specifically, but what I came up with was 3 long reverbs, not too shimmery and swirly, each in mono, going into a formant filter on in Ableton Live, panned around the stereo spectrum, and each of those formant filters on wandering a little bit and tuned to different pitch areas, because the formant definitely, when you say it requires a certain pitch fed into it to make it sound like an So if you do them at different pitch, it's a really interesting interaction. I would be interested in playing this into my computer and having you hear what it says sometime, maybe next week. But I came up with a thing that when I play guitar notes into it, no direct signal whatsoever, I get a very, very beautiful sounding choir of voices. So you can play individual notes and build a chord, or you can strum a chord, or you can use noise and get some more vocodery sounds. And I don't know if I'm going to use it for anything, but man, that was a fun little, like, I've got these tools, I want to do something unique, I haven't seen this success. Like, it was a really cool thing to end up with. Good luck taming that. It goes on forever the way that I have it set, but maybe putting a macro for reverb time, or dump it into a short reverb time with a button so you can get rid of it when you need to as a sustain pedal. Lots of ideas. It's really fun.
Okay, thank you so much, Brett. What are your thoughts?
Reverb is one of those things that I do use for specific things. Most often I use it for choirs, and to that regard, this has started to shift lately because of things like Omnisphere. But before then, I would use sound fonts, and sound fonts are very dry. At least the ones I have are very, very, very dry. They're great at capturing the essence of a tone, but they're not great for putting that tone in place. And if I want a choir to go along with what I'm doing, often I want that to kind of sound cathedral-esque. And so I use Fruity Reverb 2, and I'll share that link here for you guys. The reason I like it is quick and dirty, allows me to build a room of a size. That by itself is hugely useful. Now you take that same sound font that's super dry, put it in the size of a room of a cathedral, and now it sounds right. Interesting things I've done with it after the fact, which is kind of where you're going, Rezi. It really comes down to I'll record that, build it as an audio file, and then what I like doing is getting into an audio file and just cutting it up in 1,000 different ways and stitching it back together. To that regard, I'll readily take let's say we'll cut out a 3 millisecond piece, right? Right. I'll grab enough of the natural formants of that and then just reverse it. So you know, and one of the things I really like doing once I have it in that small space is just sending it all over the place. You know, send it to a different ear, send it to a different filter, send it to a different side chain, really. Um, that would be the way I used reverb the most up until about a year ago. Up until about a year ago, about a year ago, I got a whole bunch of new tools, and some of them are literally called convolver. um, those are hugely interesting because you're not just applying reverb, but you're applying effects that exist in time and space of sorts. Meaning, you know, so it'll have like I guess the best way I could kind of relate it is kind of like a sequence on the Kurzweil where you're playing a single note, but that sequence drives how that note is played. This happens the same way. So as I you know, typically when I'm applying this, do vocals for it, I'll take advantage of the way that it cuts up the voice, usually in a side chain, and accomplish many of the same things, though because it is a VST and because it is also digital, it can do things so much faster than I can humanly cut up and do. And that the thing I like about it is that it's novel to me. The thing I don't like about it is that it does steal some of the creative sounds you get, you know, if we're kind of tying back into drums, that you get from doing that manual editing, that you get from taking the sound of the rim, that you get from, you know, hitting the same drum in a different part of the drum head, all those things that you lose when you take it out of the manual space. And of course, then there's always the classics where you record something in reverb and you know, or actually you record something without reverb first, reverse it, reverb it, and then re-reverse it. Those are always, you know, that's a classic effect, and it always sounds good.
Thank you. I must admit, I suck at reverb. I have to learn about reverb. I don't use reverb normally like you're supposed to. Like, here is a drum room. I do sort of. Angelspit stuff's really dry, and I've learned for maximum aggressive impact, dry. In your face, dry. But I'm trying to get away from that. The bugger about the Moog 1 is it's got the most fucking insane Eventide fucking reverb on it. And it's so good. My go-to reverb is this one, which is the noise engineering one, and that's a module. You can get it now also as a foot pedal, and you can get it as software only. Software costs $50. Long Beach, Los Angeles, Californian, made in America. Go support them. This module is so good because you can control a whole bunch of things in real time with control voltage, and also the software version you can go in there and automate shit. It's built to be automated. That's the point of it. And I've also got another thing as well that is like a delay on drugs, and it's tits. Once again, you can get in there and change stuff because it's built for it. And you can be changing the shimmer, and the shimmer can be coming in these waves of shimmer. And so for the ambient stuff, it's so good. One thing I do love doing is either side chaining reverb hard, or actually automating it, fading it in and out throughout the song. So now everything's dry and now there's a bit of reverb. Now it's reverb. Now it's just reverb. So it's the idea of whatever the thing is that's talking, it's coming at right there. So therefore it has no reverb now. But now I'm going to pull it all the way back here. So the reverb's basically going to come up and take over. Shit like that's really good fun. But maybe I used to have this wonderful Yamaha piece of crap bloody thing. I don't even remember what it was called, but it had the best gated reverb on it, and it was like 12-bit shitty fucking. Oh, why did I turn down? Seth offered me his Rev 5 once, and I turned it down. I was an idiot. Fuck, I should have taken that. But gated reverbs, yes, absolutely, because they work every fucking time on drums and stuff. Everything else, no. And I find in general, I have to really lay off the effects because even choruses will start destroying the sound's sonic strength. You might want that, but I'm learning. I have so much to learn about effects. And then you go to another piece of machinery, then you trying different plugins. It's all different. And that's great. It's really fantastic because you're getting this really emotional response. That's my whole life in a bucket. Rezi, what's your life in a bucket look like?
Well, right now I'm obsessively trying to find what may have actually been a fever dream. Um, uh, Alex was kind enough to remind me of what convolution reverb was called, and then Brett, you mentioned that you're not just convolving the sound of the room. You've got these options for what else gets baked into the convolution, and one of my absolute favorite. I have a favorite reverb other than the Lexicon 480L sound. In general, Audio Ease Altiverb 2002 or 3 or whenever it came out, shipped with some an impulse response that I swear was called PA speaker in a factory hall, and the photo was this desolate, empty, huge factory space with a metallic, enormous tannoy PA horn. And I just remember putting everything through that and being like, I'm really there. It's like amazing. And I guess maybe that opened up some ideas about what to do with reverbs after that, even if it wasn't a convolution of that exact event. But processing your reverbs after to remove frequencies and add frequencies and change aspects of it. Well, yeah, no, I can't find any indication of the original release having this sample, this impulse response in it. But hey, putting your IRs through guitar cabs is, of course, now the thing that everybody does with convolution to simulate the acoustic properties of a guitar cabinet. And this had, obviously, the PA speaker was the speaker and the hall was the hall. Really interesting. Got to find it.
That sounds amazing. Thank you. Brett, what's your brain saying right now?
Another similarity to the PA speaker in the hall is the megaphone, which, I mean, I do still keep a megaphone here. I haven't thrown batteries in it in a number of years, but for a straight up dirty, somewhat distortion effect, a straight up megaphone, and they've also created this in circuits. Some actual mixer boards have that sound built in as a button if you want to enable it, and I forget, it's some kind of amplifier, but the way it amplifies is it only grabs half the waveform, and so with it necessarily comes a distortion. And anyway, that's what you reminded me of there, Rezi.
I love it. Thank you. Once again, experimentation, fucking around, man. Do we want to swing over to design and logos and color? Okay, Rezi, I got a feeling you got shit you want to talk about with this one.
I do, but I'm still hung up on finding this ratty PA speaker thing. Give me a couple minutes to collect my thoughts.
All right.
We talked about some interesting stuff already on the topic, so I'm into it. But yeah, let me get back to you on that.
Well, if we're not feeling it, we don't have to talk about it because for the love of it, I just don't remember if we talked about it last week. I thought we tapped on it, but we didn't go deep.
We did. We
think
talked a
you
little bit
did.
about matching systems, Pantone charts and stuff. But,
God.
I have since then actually finished a design that kind of used some of the negative space minimalism ideas that we were talking about. But we did pretty, I don't know how much time we spent on it, but there's always more to talk about that. But we talked about some typeface selections and some color theory stuff and the matching systems and things like that. So I think we covered it pretty well,
All
my
right.
brain says.
Okay, cool. Does anybody else want anything else they want to throw in at this point? Merga. Alex, talk to me.
How do you make music when you don't feel like making music because your brain is a bit fried, but you still want to make music in a way?
Go for a walk, unfry your brain, do some sit-ups. It's all about getting some fresh blood moving around your body. Go to a cafe, get on a bus, go to where people are. It could be a simple walk. My theory is that when there's humans around you, the juices that inspire music start being inspired. Um, because the problem is you go into the core of your brain, which is a very uninspiring place to be sometimes. So you got to get out of there. Yeah, go get a coffee. Force yourself to get a fucking coffee or a tea or whatever. Force yourself and take something to write down lyrics, pictures, images, anything at all. And yeah, get arty, get creative, get abstract. I get as abstract as you can. Do it. Buy yourself a fucking coffee. It's, maybe a piece of cake too. Best fucking 10, $15 you'll spend, I reckon. Brett, what do you reckon?
No, you're dead on. That is definitely a good method to get the creative juices going. The only problem I've ever had with that is, like when I go for a walk or something like that, it's like, okay, cool. Now I have a song idea and I'm a mile away from my studio. Um, so I recommend the same thing in your studio. Move your shit around. Especially if you've got anything that can readily move it to the other side of the room. So that way you actually have to get up and go to it. It sounds weird and it sounds kind of cliche, but the guitars that are sitting back on there are exactly me doing that. Use the instruments in a new way, and when you do so, involve physical movement. What I have found that a lot of times, you sit down in the seat to do music, and it's kind of like, okay, why am I sitting in my seat? Okay, I'm bored and I want to go away now. And to fight that, I can sit there and I can give you unhealthy methods in which I used last Saturday, but um, but for the more healthy methods, yeah, movement, guitars are awesome for that because you can stand up, you can sit down, you can walk around your room. And if you do that with a synthesizer, be careful, but it works the same way. You spread them out, and then that way there's a part of your brain going, okay, when I want that thing to change, I have to go over here and tweak that thing. That's something that's always helped me. I used to make my studio always used to be linear. So the workstation was the end of the production chain instead of the U shape that you see now. And it was literally so I could do that. It looked much more like Alex's from Vulture Culture, where you'd have all the synths lined up, and then you'd have the station where you would do everything. And the whole idea behind that was I would go over to the end of the chain, and I'd play something into the system, and then I'd have to tweak it and figure out what of that I liked. Maybe that helps.
Isn't it funny how, once again, sometimes you want your studio to be really well set out, sometimes you don't. Because sometimes if your studio is a mess, you're jumping over neurological hurdles to get stuff done. Sometimes that can be a good idea. Sometimes it can be a good thing. Rosie, what are your thoughts?
I didn't remove the ones that people have already said. Trying to do some music, but you don't want to do music, but you want to do some music. Switch instruments. Read the fucking manual. Put on your headlamp and start pulling out the goddamn cables that aren't connected to anything. Different tuning. Red lights only. Optional candles, incense. Get away and don't, but also don't do anything else at all. That's what I have.
Thank you. I think we've come to that time of the year, that time of the month where it's time for a reading. So I'm today's oblique strategy reading. Do we want to do this? If you want an oblique strategy reading, let's do this. Who wants one? Okay, Brett. Humanize something free of error.
Humanize something free of error.
Yeah. Ivan.
Okay.
Cluster analysis.
Oh my. It knows me.
Razi. Mute and continue.
God.
Look at you. Alex, put in earplugs. So this is the Brian Eno amazing wisdom of random to make you think about shit. I'm just going to go through the list. Tablespoon. Make a sudden, destructive, unpredictable action. Incorporate. Adapt, manipulate. Is the intonation correct? Great. I don't see any other names here. Where the fuck is Diana today? That's it. If you want, Markleford, if you're still here, convert a melodic element into a rhythmic element.
I am going to send that to him in chat since I know him personally.
Fantastic. Convert a melodic element into a rhythmic element. I know. It just makes you think about it, doesn't it? It's funny. We were talking, and of course I ended up looking at noise engineering stuff. And they've got a piece of gizmo in there that it's basically a rhythmic preset, but there's 30 different rhythms, and they break them down into the parent rhythm and then the child rhythms. So that might be kick, snare, hat, toms. And it was really interesting because I thought, that's such a cool idea. I'd never use it. And then because I would never use it is even a more reason for me to use it. And then I was thinking, well, because it's noise engineering and there's always a little bit of chaos in there, I didn't do one for me. Use an old idea. Thanks. Fire up the Emacs. Because I wouldn't do it, I should therefore use it, and I should therefore do it. And also, you're doing the song and you're programming it and you're getting it done, and that's great. But then it comes time to record it and dedicate it, and suddenly it's changed. Maybe that's the card set is called Oblique Strategies. And this is something Brian Eno did to help get you out of a rut. And it's fucking great. It's so good. And I guess it's really funny that it really works well with everything we do here, because constantly it is about experimentation and it is about questioning your process. Always. That's what it always comes down to for us. And, oh, you do this thing? Fuck, I'd never do that. I should do that. Which is why I really love this thing, Zoom, podcast, whatever the fuck it is, because it's always, every single album I have done for the last 4 years, 4 years since we've been doing this, 5 years, has been changed because of what happens here. And today I've come out of it going, maybe I should start using more reverb with Angelspit. So yeah. So thank you for that. Ivan, your hand is up. That's all right. Rezi, now your hand is up.
One of the huge strengths and advantages you've got of having a dry aesthetic and not using verbs is when you do pop one in, the contrast is stunning. You know, like you can go minimalist even with a maximalist reverb in contrast to a, fucking crispy up front aesthetic. And like all of a sudden people are like, wow,
Yeah.
headphone trip. It's like, it's cool, especially if you do it within the constraints of your rhythmic and controlled environment where the gates are hard and the reverb cuts off abruptly and things like that I'm sure you're probably thinking already of incorporating. There's some, yeah, do that.
Good fun. Brett, thinking, go. What are you?
Yeah, so I mean, since we've been doing this, it just kind of I've gotten a lot more cinematic. We're using reverbs and delays for a period of time. We'd call them gated, but they're not really gated because they're actually part of the samples themselves. But no. This, I mean, what the experimentation and the ideas that we end up sharing here end up actually being really, really cool. Even when we're just kind of BSing about, okay, I did this week.
Yeah. It's a very good thing. Hey, Adam and Diana aren't on today. This is weird. Nor is Rob. I think Diana was seeing.
I
Okay.
saw Rob earlier.
Okay. Just checking in. What do you bastards want to bloody talk about?
I stopped by New Music Wednesday 2 weeks in a row. Spank the Nun was on, and Honey, I forgot her artist name, but there was another one. But I saw Diana and Adam both weeks, so they're around. Hopefully everything's fine today.
Fantastic. I'm hoping so too. And remember, either fling on over to MTV TV or jump on the stretch metal droneathon. I love this concept of doing a fucking droneathon. It's magical to me. A whole bunch of synthesizers and go. See you tomorrow. And bring your own mattress and bloody pillows. Actually, Matt and I were talking about doing something like this in LA. Dope. Alex, I see your hand talk to my face, please.
Has any one of you ever tried out reverse reverb, and is it worth messing with, or is it just a gimmick?
Yes, it's awesome. I actually use it on my vocal. Really, really short, really short. And it adds a crunch because when it gets to the beginning of it, it goes. So I think they're fantastic. Resi, what do you think?
Yeah, for quick risers, like really short risers into a new section, I use it kind of a lot. Snare drum, toms, that kind of thing. Like I use it once in a while as a little quick thing for rhythmic element. Just that came to mind. Draw it in. And also I've done a few examples of select lines in the vocal need the long, rising verb up to the, like if there's a good consonant at the start of the word, or even, I can think of a couple of like longer sustained vowels that had the verb coming up to them. It's a trippy sound. It's a beautiful sound. And of course, subject to all of the varieties and effects and interesting things that you can do with the reverb coming off the tail in the usual way, whether it stutters or swirls or has a quick ramp or is gated and starts, or as Carl was saying, is short, just as part of the body of the, like a pre-effect. There's so much fun stuff to do in there, and there's still no like instant way to do it. If you've composed a sound with a reverb, you still gotta print the thing and then go back in time, unless you're going to offset your entire project by 7 seconds. So when you hit play, reverb tails start, and then, now the beat starts. But you do whatever your resample this track kind of effect is, or, pipe your entire LR bus to a track to capture a full band event going into the reverb. But yeah, totally. There's a lot of rhythmic echo, cluster echo that forms into a rhythmic echo, diffuse verb that gets focused. All of those things coming up to an event are super cool risers and texture fillers. Love it.
Thank you. Brett, hit me with it. And then I'm gonna, after you've done, I want to ask the question, outboard reverbs, effects units versus software. So
Yeah,
firstly, the floor is yours, Brett.
sure. Yeah, the rising reverbs and whatnot. Yeah, I use them mostly in breaks though, and more than reverb, delay. Delays can accomplish a lot that reverb can, and they can be a little bit cleaner, especially in a mix. Reverb likes to give you that bathroom noise, yeah. And they're really well, this is a matter of preference, obviously, but what I love reverb for is building the environment. So if this drum needs to exist in a hallway, it should sound like a hallway. If it needs to be a cathedral, it needs to be a cathedral. If it needs to be a tiny little room and it's something to just be pop pop, great. But it's always about environment, and with me and reverb. To that regard, one of my favorite things to do is in breaks. I'll enter a break with a big reverb and sometimes a delay. That way, you're falling off a cliff, right? Going into the break and the break's going on. And then what I'll typically do is I'll grab that same sample and a lot of times I'll make it quieter, but I'll keep the reverb and everything and just reverse it. And then that will be the intro back in. That way there's continuity between where I dropped you and where you're getting right back into the meat of it. But I try not to make it too long. Either that or I try to really exaggerate it and make it super long. And that way, there's this thing stalking you.
Love it, Ivan.
Okay, the software versus hardware on the reverb. Most of the time, I've become a pretty big fan of my light pedal, which does I mean it's a spring reverb, but it's also got a laser in it to do this sensing. And it's got a ton of settings, so you can fiddle around with it and change how it's going to work, depending on the situation. And then over in the Eurorack, I have a Storm Electric tank reverb that I got the biggest damn tank I could find for it, and it sounds good, it sounds lush, it's nice. And then on the digital side, hate to admit it, but Valhalla works for me. And I use it all over the place just because quite often I'm working in software anyways, so I will just push forward with that. But I found that this gets back to our percussion discussion. Like these days, I am really going with very short, tight drum sounds with like practically no tail. And if there's practically no tail, there's also practically no room for reverb on that. So the reverb gets bumped up to the bass sound, um, and occasionally like the lead and vocals. But okay, and I'm just gonna throw ands on that until I'm done. But like you can't use reverb everywhere. You have to, kind of be picky about where you put it. And then also be kind of picky about like use the right tool for the right job. And like by and large, I found that, I can almost always get away with Valhalla, but then, when it's time for me to switch up to the light pedal, it is time to switch up to the light pedal.
Good stuff. Yeah, everyone loves Valhalla. Man, everyone loves Valhalla. Razi, what are your thoughts?
My software solution, like my default set, powers up with A buses, just Ableton's one of the verbs. I think I might have switched it to their convolution plus algorithmic one because it does some things that I like, but it was formerly just their built-in reverb because why be picky? The controls work. It does what you needed to do. And then the B send is a delay that goes into that verb, also a tempo delay, probably quarters or dotted eighths. And then the C bus is now, since Carl, you told me to do it, and I did, my reverb tank with the springs, the coils. So that's coming back at like minus 20 of buzz probably. So it's got hum and noise on it that I can use for things. And if I just, hit my desk in the right way, it'll flutter the springs. So we got that going for us, which is nice. And of the three things that I go for that are still connected more or less to either the patch bay or to a bus, the springs are still there. Fucking piano is great in them. A drum goes patoing when you put it in it. It's awesome. The new verb, which is the Lexicon 480L, which I don't turn on that much because let's face it, there's a lot of things that kind of do that. But if you need new bricks and new verb, or you need the random hall, like that algo is that thing, and you know it is what it is, and you get a nostalgia hit that is similar to the way the springs do it. And then I have the Depth 5, which does a very unique take on swirled modulated reverb. It's a post chorus after the reverb that it's a real digital chorus, but it doesn't sound like anything else in the way that it twists back into the reverb tail. So unique tones on the springs, new verb, Lexicon, and the Roland Depth 5 modulation tail verb for outboard stuff. And onboard is just whatever. The digital ones, there's a lot of them, but Valhalla is high on the list right now.
Spring reverbs, man. You can't beat them. And the great thing about a spring is also if you don't watch the input, you will distort it. And
Mine's in the
hear
red.
it.
I don't even, it's just like, if
I've
I
got
go
a
back there and look at it, it's
mine. I've got a Stingray, and it does this nasty. So it's a modular spring. It does a nasty thing where you'll hear it clip, and it's old school, and it sounds apparently like the ARP 2600's original spring that it clips ugly. Or not really ugly, like it's okay, that's analog and mechanical. But springs are the best because if you want something to sound like 1974, get a fucking spring reverb. And Adapt, the Eventide Black Hole is kind of on the Moog one, and it's fucking beautiful. Brett, guide me through your fucking fuckity fuck.
Rock on. All right. Hardware versus software. I say yes. I run two Alesis Quadraverbs in my studio. These are two older model but very powerful multi-effects units. Reverb, of course, is part of that chain, but the nice thing about that chain is they did a lot of the things that you can now do in VSTs in terms of I want to wire this effect to this effect to this effect. By the way, Kurzweil does this as well, and that's where we bring in the Kurzweils. So the Kurzweils, of course, have their own effects banks. I use them on the Kurzweil, which really kind of says that I have two schools of thought where it comes to hardware versus software. If it's part of the synthesis of the song, part of the part of what I'm ultimately going to record, 99.9% of the time, that comes from hardware. Once it gets recorded, it inverts. 99% of everything I do to detail exists within software and exists within the DAW. And what I like about that is, if I need the DX7, for example, to sound like an old school unaffected DX7, then no problem. Leave, go bypass and I'm done. If I need it to resemble more what the K2000 can do, it's a matter of adding an effects box to it. And then I can very quickly get to a place where they're very complementary, if not almost like each other. But once you get it into recording, or once you're dealing with a recorded track, there are so many other things that you can do with the digital waveform that honestly it makes more sense for me to keep that in digital space than to pipe it back out into one of the hardware units. Um, uh, and so yeah, it ends up being yes to both. They support each other.
Yeah, good stuff. Thank you. Alex, how do you use this stuff?
So I think I'm relatively boring in that in software. I just use the Ableton included reverb. I think they have more than one, but it's the algorithmic one. And sometimes if I want to be more creative or like have something more unique, I use the black hole plugin. And also Eventide has this ultra tap plugin, which is a tap delay, but if you put it in the right settings, you get a sort of reverb-like sound. But unfortunately, I forgot how to do it. I used to just know the settings by heart, but no, when I tried it, it just doesn't sound the same. So yeah, and in hardware, I just used the Octatrack Dark Reverb or Plate Reverb. Just because they work and they're included in what I already have. I thought about getting used Lexicon, the cheap ones or the affordable ones that were like sold 10 years ago, because now they are even more affordable used. But I don't feel the need to buy one right now.
Thank you. This is a really interesting question where, like, because I've got one of those Lexicon Blue things, LX 200 or something. It's a beautiful sounding reverb. You can't do a lot with it as far as editing, etc. goes, but there is a USB plugin that you pull into Cubase and it looks at it as if it is a digital effect, and you can kind of get in there and fuck shit up a bit, and that's great. It's so interesting that old school reverbs have a sound outdoor, like they really do. And sometimes you want that sound, whereas modern things can modulate, change, affect, add, subtract as it's going. So they can evolve the reverb itself. Um, and yeah, that's really interesting that I don't know, it's yeah, so I guess, absolutely half and half is a really great way to do it because like, Adapt's talking about the Eventide black hole and others, the one Ivan was mentioning. There's no fucking way you will get an old reverb to be able to do that shit. Plus, there's quite a bit of number crunching to do a beautiful, lush, seamless reverb. Old machines can't really do that because the computers in them are crap. But that's kind of good. Like I've mentioned the Chaos Pad before. When you listen to it and you honestly listen to it, they sound awful. But that's what's fantastic about them is they sound like shit. And nothing, God, I've got a potty mouth. Nothing, nothing, I don't think there's very many plugins that actually attempt to try and do that. And I'm not talking about cheap crap reverbs plugins. I'm talking about something that can emulate the crunch of a Chaos Pad or whatever, or those RX Rev 5s and Rev 7s and stuff. I don't know. It's just a thought. My answer is I don't know. Still learning. So much to learn. Hey, Alex, your hand's still up. Did you want to add anything?
Yes, there's a YouTuber called Ben Jordan who did like a really long video on comparing all the top software and hardware reverbs. And what I came out of it is that they all sound great, and I sometimes don't hear that much of a difference. Yeah, if you're interested into getting a new reverb, that's maybe a recommended watch.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you. Razi, how do you feel about this?
That was my takeaway from the Ben Jordan stream that I skipped through too. I was like, those all sound great. I'd use any of them for all the same reasons, for all the same purposes. I think controls and opinion are kind of nice in a reverb now. So I'm not usually looking for solved, this sounds like some rooms and vocal plates. I'm usually looking for the interface does what I want it to, or it's got a patch that's like, they're thinking like I do, that kind of thing. Yeah, I was gonna make some other comments on older reverbs. The Brett, I remember being very jealous of the MIDI verbs gated algorithm, because the Roland offerings, the depth 5 and 3, had a very soft like tail of the gate, like it was a gated reverb algorithm without an actual gate, and the cutoff wasn't dramatic at all. But the MIDI verb, that had a like really hard cutoff at the end of the gated verb. And the term we'd use for, Carl, as you mentioned, the lack of CPU power and algorithm prowess was ball bearings on a tin plate. I think the effect.
That's fantastic. And I got to tell you, like, unfortunately, my K2000's effects, the Digitech isn't working, but I fucking love that Digitech. I love it. And for some reason, I just hear it and I go, oh my God, it makes the K2000 sound like the 90s. I love it. Brett, what are your thoughts?
I guess part of where I'm going, and maybe this kind of goes off onto another topic. So if we need to, pan it, that's fine for now. But my kind of thought to it is, how often do you just purely use reverb if you're going to use reverb versus reverb plus a combination of something else like distortion? I know that if I'm using reverb, for example, about the only times I'm using it purely are literally for like a choir, in which I want that, like I mentioned earlier, that sound font. I want that boys choir to sound like it's in a freaking cathedral. But if I'm using it on my own voice, no, not even close. I use tons of effects on my voice.
Love it. God, this is making me want to. It's making me want to do dark ambient. And if you want some dark ambient, remember, this is going on right now. Alex, I see your hand. I'm just biting in really quickly. So this is the Stretch the Metal thing. Stretch the Metal. It's Sustain the Drone, excuse me, by Stretch Metal. And it's a fundraiser to keep them going, because they actually do grants to young drone artists. And there's a modular gear giveaway. All sorts of really fun things are going on. It's a really wonderful little collective. Shouldn't call it little, it's huge. There's people all over the world from it. Alex, talk to me.
To continue Brett's point, I use it for what people, I think, usually use it for, to get some space in the sound, like to make it less dry. But also sometimes it's great to get like a texture, like you put something 100% wet, then you just sample the reverb tail and get like something that's ethereal and otherworldly and maybe a bit different. Yeah, that's what I use it mostly for. And I feel there's also a sweet spot with controls, because if there are too many controls, it's a bit daunting and I don't know what to do, and I usually mess my sound up. But if it's just two, I'm just, I wish I had a pre-delay, or I wish I had like more of a EQ possibility or something like that. So I think there's also that consideration with choosing reverbs.
Thank you very much, Razi.
I want to do a little accountability exercise here. Brett and Carl, who don't use reverbs as much, I sort of did a mental count of the number of verbs plugins that I throw on things in a typical song mix, and I'm thinking of all the places where they work their way in. And I do a lot of early reflections without the tails. I do a lot of complicated random short delay flutters and stuff. That's a reverb. But like a guitar amp simulator has room in it already, so there's some reverb. Usually I'll put my choice of room so that the mic'd cabinet, these simulated things, have air to breathe in. And then of course the processing mix verb, the bus verb that goes on it, that's larger, and maybe an effect specific verb. So we're up to like 4 just on the guitars. Then the vocal, like I'm recording in a booth, it's not the tone that I usually want, so some sort of famous Studio A kind of verb goes on that, just to hit the ears, not because you're supposed to hear it. And maybe it's down the middle mono, just to simulate that I'm recording that mic in a room, not in the ISO booth. And then that, of course, has probably the bus verb for the song. So 5, 6, 7, and multiply that out for synths with early reflections and choruses even that have delays with regenerative feedback. And we're up to a lot of things that count as reverbs, even if they're not titled reverb on the tin, when you use the plugin. So if I could say a larger mix has a dozen and a smaller mix has 6, maybe it's even twice that of reverb style effects on things individually and in buses. Do you actually find maybe there's some wiggle room for that happening, or do you more strictly, nope, my delays are 1 slap on the feedback, and they're 100 milliseconds or shorter, and there's no spatialization with choruses and things like that? What's your take on where my mind goes there?
Brett, the floor is yours.
For me, I view it kind of like most of these things are multi-effects that are kind of blended together. And so if we're talking about like pure reverbs, really, a pure reverb is something I use sparingly. It does that thing. Multi-effects, on the other hand, are inherent to our instruments. They are part of its sound. So, I mean, there's the school of thought of, yes, these things are in use, but are you adding additional on top of it to accomplish something else, like you do with vocals? And part of me dismisses a little bit the actual effects on any given synth sound, or of the guitar, for example, in going through, I choose cabinet A, or cabinet B, and it has some sort of minimal reverb there. Because really, if I think, or this is just my own mind, I think if I tell somebody I put reverb on something, then what I'm telling them is like, there's a thing that is going to sound like this thing is in the shower or something like that, versus what I actually do most of the time, which is I take some sort of blended effect, often utilizing more on the delay spectrum than the reverb spectrum, but it is a spectrum, to where that ends up getting combined with things like multi-frequency compressions. So an example of that would be Maximus in the FL Studio world, where you can actually, I want to take this and average it into 2 frequencies, or I want to average it into 3 or 5. And then it becomes, the effects that you end up getting out of it are way different than what we would traditionally call reverb. I don't know if that quite answers your question, but that's where my brain goes with it.
Yeah, this is really interesting that I don't when I do my vocals, there is, because it goes through the TC Helicon, I will use the reverb on there, but it's super short. And my thing with reverb sometimes is, if you can hear it, it's too much. You're adding vibe, and you're adding, I'm such a wanker. If it's on the Chaos pad, it's specifically for an effect. So it's that sound that I'm going for, that front 242 sound. I might add a gate on the snare or the main clap. Or I will specify that the sample stops early, or I'll put a gate on it. But as far as the synths and everything else goes, I guess I try not to, there's probably reverbs and stuff in there. But I try not to, because I'm going for a really stark, brutal, emotional impact.
Yeah.
And I find that hits.
This is exactly what I'm getting at, is like this intentionality. Like, some of these things may be reverbs, but what are we really creatively trying to do here? And
Yeah.
for you, it's have that upfrontness. And obviously putting stuff in a big room is the opposite of upfront. It's far awayness, which totally different aesthetic, totally different message. And I think knowing what we're doing with reverb spaces, short, splashy, front 242, gatey, mid-rangey verbs are not a traditional reverb, and it doesn't push the things away in the way that a swirly The Cure's string pad massive stereo experience does. There's a whole spectrum of stuff to do between those.
Mm,
Interesting.
mm. Alex, what are your thoughts?
Unless it's a deliberate sound design choice, I usually just have one reverb as a send effect, and that's it. I tried to have multiple reverbs as inserts, but it sounded just messy. And maybe if I were a better mixing engineer, I can make it work. But from my experience, just having one reverb as a send is the best way to go, to have like a nice, consistent, tidy sound.
Okay, fair enough. Brett, last thoughts. They're yours.
All right, Razi, yeah, the kind of, all right, so how I take Leviathan, for example, big monster far away coming at you. The reverb sounds like, the monster is huge, right? And so that's part of what I say when I'm building that environment. Yes, that gets, that sample and everything uses a really big reverb, and everything else in the song doesn't. Another thing that Carl touched on real quick is where you start to blend the line between delay and reverb, and that is, you want that motion of something coming to you or going away from you, and what does that sound like? Part of that is a little bit of Doppler, part of that is a little bit of environmental. So anything I can do as an artist to further put you in the world that I'm building is what I'm going to do. If reverb is that tool that allows me to create motion or define the space you're in, then I want it. Ultimately, though, it's one of those things that you really have to respect, because it will just chew up your sonic space so quickly.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Rosie, thoughts?
Here's what I'm coming away with from y'all's, that I just did this last night on a live mix, not on my own thing, but like when it doesn't sound good enough yet, sometimes I'll just bust it into reverb. Oh, now it sounds good enough. And I don't want that to be the solution for everything when it's not an intentional vibe, space, story kind of thing. And I would like to work on it in a different way more often. And then if I still need to spatialize it with verb, do it. But if the thing doesn't sound quite good enough and you just dump it into a room or a hall, it's like, is that really? I might do that a lot.
Thank you. Well, might wrap this up, but if I may have the closing words, a song that has inspired me my entire life from when I first heard it when I was a child is Pipeline by Depeche Mode. Actually, I was a teenager. It's straight off, I think of off an emulator too, straight out of it. Not mixed, not EQ'd, nothing. No reverbs, nothing. They took it straight out of the stereo masters. And it's such a stark, it's such an amazing song because of the emotional impact of that song. So that's Depeche Mode's Pipeline from 83 or 84, off Construction Time Again, which is probably my favorite album. And I listen to that song and I just go, there's so much to learn in this piece of music, like the boldness of, oh, we're not going to run it through an 80s fucking lexicon or whatever. It's just so mad. But anyway, this is the Art of Rock, and it's all about challenging ourselves in this thing. And I've walked away with so much. We are every Saturday here. Adam, welcome, dude. We're about to bail, but thanks for coming. Here on Angelspit's Twitch, Angelspit's bloody YouTube. Go like those things, please. So we can keep all the stuff going. Angelspit's Patreon is there. Whole bunch of that stuff is free. So join as a free member or join $3 a month if you want, whatever you want. Industrial Incisions playlist has got a whole bunch of really cool music that you need to know about. Please. Vulture Culture every Wednesday night. Best synth bloody deep dive ever. I'm wearing the t-shirt. Join that and learn. Like, you're with a whole bunch of inspiring people, and Alex, aka Vulture Culture, knows his shit. Brilliant, absolutely inspiring. Rezi, thank you so much for helping today with
You
this.
are welcome, sir. It's always good to be here. Thank you for having this show for us.
Absolute pleasure. We were joined by some of these people today. Um, what else was I supposed to talk about? I can't remember. Oh yeah, we're gonna rate to MTV TV, but if you also want to check out a massive stream that is happening right now, go to stretchmetal.org. They're raising funds for it. I'm a part of that. I am doing a stream at 3:45 Pacific Standard Time. It's going to be awesome. And we're raising money to keep it going. And I'm very proud of mine because I will be using the blaster beam lots. So it should be fun. We are right now going to ride over to MTV TV. Hold on, I have to put that link in here just in case people don't have it and they're watching on something else. It's here. So if you're watching on something else, please shoot on to MTV TV. It is fucking awesome. I'm gonna set up that right now. We're gonna hang back here and have a chat. Wow, technology, isn't it amazing? Go work, please. Will you work? I fucking hate you. Yeah. Diana, welcome. We just raided. So we're going to hang back here and chat. Thank you for joining us on yet another Heart of Rock. Let me know when that bloody raids happened. Oh, yeah. Are we raiding yet? It's so exciting. We're waiting for a raid. What did I do wrong? Why don't you raid? I hate you. Come on, you bastard. Raid. Is it raiding? Did I do it wrong? Fuck, I hate this. Diana, help me out. This piece of shit isn't fucking raiding. Oh, because that was Restream. Carl,
Looks
you're
like-
an idiot. So that's the link to Restream. God, I want to fucking kick everything right now. Where do I
There we
fucking
go.
raid? There you go.
It
Thank
is.
you, Diana. God, I'm like 5. Hey, bloody happiness and everything. See you next week. What the fuck is next week? I don't know. We're here. Rocking and rolling.